Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Next Mountain podcast, where we explore transitions, finding your purpose, and creating meaningful impact. Today, we're joined by Dr. Anne-Marie King. She's a psychiatry doctor, performance psychologist, and founder of the realignment method. She specializes in helping founders and CEOs in their post-exit transition. So Anne-Marie has spent a decade working at the intersection of clinical psychology and business performance with founders, executives, and high achievers across the UK, the US, Europe, and beyond. And so in this conversation, we explore what she's learned from these years of practice, what's needed to walk down the valley in between the mountains and find that next chapter, and find something truly at the level of your potential. We speak facing fears, breaking patterns, and doing the things that will set you free from feeling trapped and lost. It's one of the conversations I've enjoyed and learned from the most. So I hope you enjoy it too. And if you do, please like and share so we can keep bringing you these inspiring stories. And so now, let's get started. So welcome to Next Mountain, Anne-Marie.
I am so good. Spring is here and I am definitely in the spring vibe. So yeah, I'm brilliant. Thank you.
So Anne-Marie, we know you. We've had the luck to exchange with you, but I'd love our audience to know you a bit better. So how would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Anne-Marie King. I am a doctor who has studied psychiatry and gone on to become a performance psychologist, essentially. That's the short little bit. That's how I introduce myself. So what I do in a nutshell is I help people identify blocks to performance and fulfillment, and I remove them. So I have two sections of my work. I work mainly with kind of business owners and founding CEOs who are scaling companies and going through all of that. And I also work with post-exit founders and senior leaders who are transitioning into the next chapter. So I have an aligned next chapter kind of methodology. And I also have kind of the scaling founders, building businesses kind of methodology. And both come from a psychological perspective of how we can use psychology to increase performance and fulfillment.
Yeah. Okay. And now I'm thinking maybe the audience is like, oh no, psychology is scary, or like, what is this? Or like, why should I be interested? Or you know what I mean? Like, how do you speak to them of this? Like,
yeah, I mean, all these words that we use at the end of the day, they're kind of just quick abstractions so that people get things quickly, right? To be honest, I have such a varied background and brought so many fields together. I say psychology just because I want people to know it's kind of study of the mind and I have some kind of clinical expertise in it. But I mean, it's a much broader than psychology and it's much easier than that. It's pretty much, we all have a mind. We all have definitions and beliefs that kind of downstream into the actions, into the feelings, into the experiences that we have. And so I like working at the root of why we behave the way we behave, of what's blocking behavioral results or outcomes, and can we do something about it in an internal way as well as a strategic way. So I like fixing the former bit first because it's upstream and it's more of the constraint than the downstream stuff of actions and strategies, tactics, that kind of thing. But I like both. I like playing with both. You've got to have a bit of action and a bit of the mental understanding. So what I do is kind of understand that whole system, what I call the causal chain of how we have experiences or results. And I look very much at that first section and then how it turns into actions and experience.
Really interesting. So I'm curious to hear about your story. You mentioned you're a doctor. So how does someone go from studying medicine to working with high achievers and the like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll try and give you the medium version, but you can let me know where you want to expand upon. So I grew up in a household where my parents were exceptional entrepreneurs, immigrant entrepreneurs in London, and we had great privileged lives. We had great education, great resources, etc. And Saturdays would still be, you've got to do all this work first. You've got to do all this chores. You've got to do all this stuff before you can go and enjoy yourself. And I mean, it had merit, working hard to enjoy things or working hard to succeed, etc. But I was always so frustrated with that order of things. Like, why can I work and enjoy, etc.? And I always saw kind of my parents as absolutely brilliant for what they were able to accomplish in their circumstances. But also I saw the cost of, running all these big businesses and the stress and the striving and and the never quite resting, never quite enjoying the fruits of your labor. So growing up, I already had this sense of, that looks cool, and I know that you're doing really well, but I also want you to just enjoy yourself. So I've always had that thing since I was small. And inadvertently, I said to myself, oh, I'm not going to do business because that's stressful. I'm just going to do medicine.
Oh, yes.
So, and the thing is, it wasn't like an avoidance thing at the time in that sense. It was, I genuinely loved medicine. I mean, I was 4 when I knew I was going to be a doctor. So I had a genuine love for that. And it was pretty aligned, but I also had this subconscious thing of, oh, business is really hard and stressful. And that's why people don't enjoy themselves. Anyway, so what's funny about that is obviously now I run businesses and I love it. And I find it as a great vehicle for freedom and growth. But I followed medicine, and I, started with obstetrics. I really liked the idea of being on the happy side of medicine. So this is it coming again, this whole desire to work and play, work and play. So obstetrics was the first thing that kind of pulled me in. I didn't stick with it entirely just because it didn't end up being what I had envisioned it to be. So that was the first kind of meeting of reality. I did a lot of different kind of rotations, GP, cardiology, and then kind of settled in psychiatry most of all. And at the same time as I was kind of pursuing my career in medicine, I'd actually started a company, first or second year of medical school. And that I kind of fell into just because I was teaching from when I was in school. And I kept being referred because the way I was teaching was about mental models and people really liked the way I was teaching them. And so I got referred to a lot of kind of high profile and high net worth families who said, help my kid and etc. And it kind of, really just expanded quite quickly. And then I thought, oh, okay, I should just make more of me, and then I can continue to do the service and make more money, etc. And first lesson of business was found that you can't just clone yourself. But it was a really exciting foray into like figuring stuff out for yourself, as opposed to this contrasting path I was in medicine, which is very, you get on the conveyor belt and you keep going through the system. So that was interesting to be experiencing side by side. And they did complement each other because the things I was learning, I was obviously sort of using in some kind of way in the business and vice versa. But quite quickly in the business, not obviously, but I started making a lot more money than I would later in my career as a doctor. And I was thrown into this world of opportunity, and it just made my world so much broader than what I had lived to that point. And I met so many incredible mentors and people from all over the world. So I realized there was this world of a sort of lack of limitation versus this very much more rigid system that I was part of. And so the conflict between those two began to kind of widen. So eventually I went part-time with medicine as that company grew, and I started to do more educational and psychological services. And then the parents of the kids wanted to start working with me, asked me to help them with their business and all sorts of things. So sort of worked on the fly and was using whatever I was learning, on the medical side of things and the business and vice versa. And that grew kind of naturally until I was like, you know what, I'm not going to carry on doing medicine in this way anymore. So then I kind of fully went in on the business side and kind of helping high performers remove blocks and improve performance and travel the world and work with all sorts of incredible people. So that's sort of the arc of it. But one of the key patterns in that story is in medicine, I found a lot of frustration in working on symptoms rather than root causes. So, I love the art and the science of medicine. But what happened is, whether I was in psychiatry or GP, so like primary medicine, internal medicine, I'd see the same kind of patients coming back with the same thing, even though we've given them a plan, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Or it would just feel like there's other things going on here as to why you're unwell. That's not the thing that we're talking about. And obviously in psychiatry, that's very much the case a lot of the time. So it was very dissatisfying for me to not work on the root cause and get the satisfaction of removing that. And that is one of the other key reasons why I was looking to create my own methodology that took someone from, being stuck somewhere, whether that was with disease or whether that was with a financial block or whether with a fulfillment block, and figure out a definitive path to actually remove the root cause. So all of those things were kind of happening and took me down this path, essentially.
That's fascinating. Given that a lot of people we're speaking to are, high achiever, high performance, CEOs, etc., and you work with a lot of these people, what would you say are common patterns you see in terms of unconscious beliefs?
Essentially, if I could sum up one of the most distorted beliefs or definitions for people like us, to be honest, anyone who is high achieving, anyone who is going out there and trying to get stuff done and believes in themselves to do that, it boils down to conditional worth. So a sense of my worth is fused with what I produced in some kind of way. And that is very unconscious because you don't really feel it as that. You don't experience it as that. You think you're being useful and helpful and you love learning and you say all these things, but you don't realize until you reach a sort of trigger point, i.e. selling your company and then feeling absolutely lost and flat and there's no spark, no aliveness, that wait, why do I feel this way? And it's because that definition is running and it hasn't been investigated and it's been working for you for so long. I mean, for me, I very much learned that being good at school and getting all these rewards, grades and money and whatever else is beneficial. So why would I try and get rid of that? So it's very ingrained in society and how we're trained to fuse worth with output because you get rewarded for it. But that would be the most problematic one and the hardest for people to resonate and feel out. So the access point is usually lower down. So I would say things like success, fulfillment, happiness, purpose is easier for people to process than that core definition of worth. So, for example, with the founders who have exited, who are having that transition period of loss and lack of purpose and identity, what they will feel is like, I need purpose, or I've lost purpose, or I feel flat and I feel like I don't really know who I am, etc., etc. So that's how they experience it. And they will look for ways to fill that to feel useful again, essentially. So that is that definition working. But it's like, if I can just find my purpose, then I will feel okay. I will find fulfillment, as it's called, etc. But fulfillment is not a destination. It's like a felt sense. So these definitions, whilst, there's a reason why we all feel like this and act like this, it's not really visible when you first talk about it. It's when you get these contrasting experiences that you can start to say, what is it about me that is meeting this experience and doesn't feel right? And that's when we start to get to say, something's going on here.
Yeah.
And again, most people won't know it's their beliefs either, or their definitions, or how they've been taught. They will think there's something externally missing,
Yeah.
So I found, for example, when I first meet somebody who's just sold their company, quite often they're faced with reality, with the state of their current relationships, with the state of their, how they feel about money, with the state of, now all these people sort of want them for reasons that aren't quite, do they want you for your money? Do they want you because you're successful? There's all this sort of stuff that gets teased out and that you're faced with all of a sudden. You're kind of bombarded with the barrage of feelings and emotions. So it's really hard to sort through that.
Yeah.
And
It's a
find
lot
those
happening at
underlying
the same
things.
time, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's yeah.
Yeah.
So many questions right now are in my, I'm like, I don't want to forget anything. It's funny. You introduce yourself and telling that beautiful story of how you continue to learn life, like, oh, medicine is like this. In the end, maybe I don't like it as much or whatever. And then also looking always for your, your play, the reward. So you were always tuning in and like finding that path through the kind of combination of like external and internal factors, right? And so I wonder how much, because we see with exit founders that they've been like head down, working hard for so much. And then it's like this pivot moment where they can look inward, but it's almost like they don't know how, or at least, it's like, it's not as accessible. So I wonder if you notice that, do you see that,
Oh my
and
goodness.
why that is important? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is such a good point, because when you first come to that point, most kind of exited founders have at minimum kind of worked in the company for like 5 years at least, some 10, some 12, some 14. And then some of them have had an earn out period or whatever it is. It's just been nonstop for so long. Their body and their system and their mind have to catch up with processing what's actually just happened. And, a lot of people do go on a break and they do go on a holiday or retreat or a sabbatical or whatever. But there's a difference between rest and actually completion of a emotional processing. And I know a lot of post-exit founders, they will like read all the books. I think what's the common books that everyone reads? There's quite a few of them. The Search for Meaning, I think there's a mountain one. I can't remember, but there's a whole list that everyone sort of goes through when they're like, oh. But it's the process of clearing out the noise is quite difficult to do by yourself. I think there's something about process that is received. So yes, I can sit down and I can rest and I can watch Netflix or I can travel, I can be with myself. But there also needs to be a very intentional, active processing that's either received by a piece of paper, like whether that's journaling or whether that's speaking with someone that you trust and care about, whether that's mentorship, whether that's, a therapist, whether that's whoever it is, there needs to be an acknowledgement and a validation of where you're at and what you've been through. Until people do that, it's really hard to hear anything else. So actually, the first thing I always start with is not kind of psychological definition work or anything like that. It would always be settling the nervous system, because you've got to just meet yourself where you are. And most people don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say about the because one of the we've in our research we've uncovered the 5 pillars they go through, and one is structure and health, like structure and physical well-being, right? So like you're saying, they were disconnected from their bodies, disconnected from what's happening, and suddenly there's this space and the body's speaking differently, but also they have a different relationship with cortisol and adrenaline because their days are not as busy. And the structure of their day does not exist. They have to create one, and that creates a lot of restlessness and discomfort. So, what would you, from your point of view as a doctor and as a therapist, what would you say about that, and like maybe some tools or like?
I think people need to understand that the bit where, and I know this because everyone says this to me, now I don't have to go into the office and see my team. Now I don't have to whatever. I need to do something. I don't want to just see my wife every day, or I don't want to just I need to do something with my time. And they need to understand that phase is actually phase of its own that doesn't need to be avoided. I think it's understanding that that's not like, this is my identity and now I just have to continue doing something, realizing this is a common transition period that people go through, and that actually what you're trying to do is avoid feeling, pretty much an iceberg of feeling that has kind of accumulated over time, right? And until you look at that iceberg and you start to just sit with the discomfort, you can't go through it. It will keep coming back to you. So I think it's having a bit more education about what that restlessness, that productivity anxiety thing is, and that it's actually fear bubbling up of you trying to resist sensation. And so it's giving people a little bit more permission to say that thing is healthy for you to go through and you don't need to avoid it. And I think just some awareness of that is the first step, because otherwise you interpret it as, I should be doing something.
It's wrong. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
This is not right. I
Yeah.
can't sit
that
here.
framing.
This is not who I am. I'm a productive member of society.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing, of just reframing and understanding what's going on there, even gently. You don't need to have like all the clinical studies about that, but you need to understand that there is a resistance that is building up that needs to settle. So I think investigating, staying with that discomfort, even for little bits, and seeing what comes up can be really interesting, because it's literally finding out about yourself, getting curious about yourself in a way that you won't have done when you're busy, trying to go at the company. It's really something that is a gift, and that this time that you've spent building the company is giving you this gift of creating contrast and an emotional experience that is now being given to you to look at. So it's not a bad thing. The fact that we've worked really hard at whatever we've done is not a bad thing. And the fact that you're restless is not a bad thing. But we have to see it as a gift that we can't keep denying and just move on to the next one. You kind of have to receive the gift, receive the energy of what you've just experienced. And if you don't, it will come back and exhaust you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the risk. Or you're going to simply do it again, exit 10 years after, and have it happen to you again. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, what was
Yeah.
this 10 years of my life? What was it for?
Yeah. One of the things that we found interesting is, there's what things look out from the outside, but what's the inner experience? And that's what you're pointing to is like, we do all these things because we think it's going to make us feel a certain way. But, the research shows that extrinsic motivation, thinking like, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to get this thing, actually doesn't do it, in a way. And that's what a lot of these exit entrepreneur or everybody that's had a very ambitious goal that reaches it and realize like, it's not doing it for me. And one of the things that we want to be careful of is, some people take that same energy and take them into do-gooding or
Mhm.
philanthropy or, "Oh, well, now I don't do my business, but I'm going to find some kind of thing," but they're doing it in the same spirit. So I'm curious to, like you mentioned going through the discomfort and actually investigating your state and your, maybe your beliefs, etc. So what, I love the name of your process, the Align Next Chapter. So what does that mean?
So once you've kind of cleared out the noise, settled the nervous system a bit so that you can actually hear what I'm saying or hear what you're saying inside, you get to this bit where you're like, well, what am I saying? What is the signal? What is coming up? And what you'll find is there'll be some fear there. There'll be some of the stuff that you've resisted thing. So that definition I talked about of worth being fused with production or, finding your significance in that. So that's working. But the way that we actually get at it at this point that you're saying is understanding and reflecting back. How am I defining fulfillment here? So what most people define fulfillment as is as a destination where after I've done this achievement, after I've done this thing, I will then access this feeling of like utter contentment and happiness, essentially. And the same thing with purpose, that there's a thing, this external thing that you can do that once fulfilled or once achieved will also give you that state. So you're looking for a feeling, right? Rather than you're looking for the achievement. And you need to see that. I just really want this feeling. And so if you reframe it that fulfillment is actually always available because it is a state, it is a feeling and not destination. And purpose is really less an external singular thing and more of a kind of quality of how you engage with life. So these are all internal state questions. And actually, if people sit down, especially all these people are very, very smart, maybe too smart for their own good sometimes. But if you sit down and you actually think about why can't I feel fulfilled right now, you'll realize that you have a condition on it. And the reason why we have conditions on it is because we're scared of something. So imagine it's like, okay, I can't feel fulfilled now because I'm not doing company, I'm not doing anything, I'm not helping anyone. Therefore, I'm going to create a condition that says once I am being useful again, or something like that, then I will allow myself to feel fulfilled, right? You'll see people absolutely resist happiness, absolutely resist purpose that's already available. And so when you find these conditions, it's really easy, therefore, for someone like me to see, okay, this is what you're scared of, and putting it there in a way that they can't avoid. For example, if I think I can't be fulfilled until I'm useful, it's like, well, what would it say about you if you weren't useful? And that's the thing that people don't want to sit with. It's sitting with, okay, take away not being useful. Not take away, leave being useful.
Yeah. What
Then what
happens?
am I? And
Yes.
oh, that's horrible. Like, I'm just a waste of space then. And you will actually see how many of these kind of people will say, I'm actually a waste of space.
Mm.
No matter what they've achieved, no matter how big the company, I'm a waste of space. And that's the thing they don't want to look at. So you have to find the condition somebody's putting on the thing that they say that they want and surface the fear, which is usually a verdict on who they are.
Mm.
And you allow them to have nowhere to run to, but just sit with that fear. And usually that does 95% of the work, to be honest. because most of this work is releasing the resistance, and the resistance usually comes as avoidance of a fear or a sensation. So that's the thing. That's the big unlock. That's one of the biggest unlocks you can find, is understanding the way you're setting up your psychology and therefore your life. Facing the fear, realizing, oh my goodness, I'm doing all this just to avoid this idea of myself that I'm actually a waste of space.
That makes me very sad to
Why?
hear.
Yeah, you'd be
Yeah.
surprised. You'd be surprised.
But why do you think it's sad? And it could be also wonderful because
No,
it's
but
simple.
that's no. I mean,
Much simpler.
it makes me sad to consider that under all of this striving, we're we just want to be loved. We just want to.
Of
Yeah.
We're
course.
afraid, And
Yeah.
actually, just last week we had a conversation with someone who was, amongst other things, as a Zen Buddhist and a coach, and he was working also like yourself with high achievers, and one of the things went back to like family of origin, and that we're all just little babies who want to feel like we're okay. So I'm curious, in your work, like, how do you you mentioned that it's really about allowing people to sit with this fear and etc. So then what comes out of it? What have you seen?
First of all, at that stage, it's like such release and relief, because when you've been avoiding something for so long, and usually it's a long time. I mean, I had a exited founder who had been just striving to make his dad kind of pay for leaving him. So he wanted his father. While they were together, they weren't very rich. And then he left the family and started a new family and was successful in that family. So he had a great sense of loss of both, the life that he now lives with the new family, and then also having a father figure. And so as a fuck you, and a absolute, I don't want to feel this pain of the loss and how insignificant I feel and how unloved I feel by you, I am going to show you how fucking significant I am. Can we swear on this?
Yeah.
I think it's too late for that now.
Yeah. Just keep going.
And so, his first two companies were just like purely every day about that. And so when that ended and he was absolutely miserable, I mean, he first went and bought a lot of things and made him even more miserable. And what he really just realized was, I have not gotten over this. If anything, I feel even angrier and even worse about this relationship with my dad. And so we had to not siphon off the energy he was kind of putting it into anger to see what was beneath that defensive anger. And once he did, it was very cathartic. He was like, all this adrenaline I have to kind of show him and to avoid this is just collapsed on itself. So the first thing is that catharsis and relief that I don't have to keep up the defense, because it's very exhausting to compensate for lack in yourself. It's very, very exhausting. So the first thing is people access a whole bunch of space and relief. And then after that, because you've released energy that has been suppressed, you create space for more natural signals to come up. Because then you can really ask, I mean, you can go into where that's come from and process that, etc. That's part of the healing journey. But then you can really ask, well, what is it that I really wanted? What is it that I want now? What is it? How do I tune into myself, not in an illogical way, but in a felt signal kind of way? Because that desire that I had to get significance from my dad or validation from my dad is pointing at a natural desire that I have, whether that's everyone has a natural desire to be validated. There's nothing wrong with it. I know, in popular psychology, there's all this thing that you don't need to be validated. We do. Everyone needs to have a sense of validation. It's just where we're trying to find it can be really dysfunctional. So if you sit with, my gosh, I still need that. How can I get it without going outside of myself? Or how is it available in a different way? And they can see a way that they can get what they really want without it costing them more. That's the thing that they need, because beliefs help you. You only sustain them because they're doing something for you. And quite often in these cases, they're keeping you from losing something that you think will cost you. that next step is, yes, let me trace back where this is coming from. Let me process that. Let me feel it. Let me not run from it anymore. Let me release that energy. Let me bring my signal back online, and let me see how can I actually get what I want in a non-dysfunctional way. And usually they'll realize, my goodness, I can't believe this has been available all this time. The other thing I have to say is the other thing that most people feel that they're going to lose is their sense of drive. Like if I'm not angry at my dad, I wouldn't have built this great big company. And I don't think I would have the motivation to do anything else. So that is a definition problem where they think they're going to sacrifice something by letting that go. And so you have to figure out how to redefine the thing without loss, because essentially we will always avoid loss. So that is kind of the next bit of the work, so that they have everything that they need and want without loss.
Yeah, there's I think belief that no trauma, then no CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, but I think
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely ways to find motivations and value alignment, why you're here, whatever your sense is of why you're here on earth, or like finding that validation, but in connection with yourself, that is still a driver, right? It's just a
Mm-hmm.
different energy. It's less exhausting. It's not fear
Mm-hmm.
based. It's more
Mm-hmm.
like enjoyment based. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
Well, so Maslow did this thing, Abraham Maslow, that is, I'm sure lots of people know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where he talked about B motivation versus demotivation. It's essentially like approach versus avoid. And the thing is, the avoid motivation, which is a demotivation, I'm trying to go away from something that I fear. Like, let's say we've had poverty growing up, and, by all means, I'm going to be rich. Yeah. And so you're trying to avoid the poverty as opposed to approach the wealth. And so what happens is it can be a great, great motivator, but it doesn't reset your identity. So what will happen is, first of all, you'll get there, but you'll burn out. And then over time, you'll reset back to where you really think you are. Because usually, if I'm avoiding something or it's coming from fear, there's a sense of lack or loss involved. And that's always reflected in your identity. So that's why, the whole thing of lottery winners losing all their money and things like that, it's quite often that people will burn everything that they created to the ground in some way. So if you follow people for long enough, you follow high achievers for long enough, their great successes, you will see them kind of regress back. And it might not be that they lose all the money. It might be that they lose all their relationships or whatever. Something will always regress. So in terms of be motivation, approaching the thing that you want, the thing is, we're not trained on how to do that. We don't live our lives that way. So it's very difficult for someone to rely on that when it doesn't feel available. I mean, and this is controversial, but, the Alex Hormozis of the world and, these investors who are saying, we'll only invest in people who have trauma as a child. What they're saying is they want that hunger and then they want that drive. The problem is people feel like they don't know how to access that without the trauma, which is a really unhelpful message to be putting out there. I know
Yeah.
Hormozy, for example, he says, use what you've got. And if you've got shame, use that. If you've got pain, use that. And that, there's a positive sense of that anything can be used positively. But there's also this ingrained belief in that and definitional kind of dysfunction where it's like the only way to succeed is using things that are negative fuel. So
Yeah.
I think we need much more examples and much more education and much more experience of having phenomenal drive and ambition that is not demotivated.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's what it
Absolutely.
takes.
One of the things that's very beautiful when we speak to exit founders is that they'll go into their stories and they'll go into what they've done to succeed. But then there's a point where sometimes it pops up as like, oh, but what I really love is X, Y, and Z, or what I'd really hope to do is helping children or being an artist or I was working in the field of agriculture and it was really interesting to see these really high achieving, high status people coming to a farm and being so like you could see their childlike
Mm-hmm.
wonderment at
Yeah.
plants and nature and things like that. So I'm just curious if you've worked with people that they. Here's one thing that that's part of our worldview. Definitely is that everybody has a unique gift to contribute to the world, and part of what we want to do is to help people connect to that. But it doesn't have to be saving the world or something in a huge, maybe it's just helping your neighbor, but getting to that sense of like, this is who I feel I am, this is what I love, this is what I care about, and then acting in the world from that. So I'm just curious if you have examples of clients or people you've witnessed that have gotten to that place, and what does that look like?
The thing about that is the beginnings of doing that usually aren't rewarded in the main kind of societal ways. You might get a little bit of pleasure of, okay, I love knitting, and okay, I get a bit of pleasure with that, but how am I going to pay the bills with that? How am I going to do blah, blah, blah? No one cares about knitting. There's no market there. So people will get little bits of experience of doing what they love, but they have so many definitions around its usefulness or its value or the cost of doing that as opposed to something else, that they don't push through that to see what else is available. So, or even the sort of retreat thing where, people will have these remarkable experiences, but then just go back to doing what they were doing before and be like, oh, that was really lovely, but back to the real world. So I think people can have those experiences, but until their definitions of beliefs change about what's possible and they understand what makes it so that they can't have both, which is my whole thing. Success and joy can both be had, but we have to change the language and definitions we use about things. One of the definitions is what's safe. To be safe and to be secure, I need to keep producing. That's one that lots of us have. There's a deserving one, there's a, passion doesn't lead to money is one. Essentially all flavors of conditional worth, that we fundamentally don't believe that you can just do what you value and what's good for you and be safe in the world. That's pretty much what it boils down to. So I think that there's that kind of conversation and that piece in it. In terms of an example, I did have a guy who was kind of quite high up in the music industry and very successful there, to the point where they wanted to give him his own kind of stream of work and create some great things. And he had this belief that he can't have passion and, financial security. So at each point that he had great talent with many things. I think at some point he was a kind of famous DJ. And then, at some point he was a really, really good footballer. And he would always stop himself just at the level where he was very successful. And he would get all the money and the success and the accolades and etc. and be like, oh no, this is not my passion. So even if, he was doing really well, very talented, getting paid, he would always just say, oh, something's wrong with this. I don't see myself being able to continue to make money, or I don't see myself having passion with this anymore. And he was having a great time and being rewarded for it, but would keep finding something that meant that he couldn't. And so he came to me because he was like, I don't have passion and I can make money without passion, but I can't make it with. And he was trying to find his passion. Can you help me find the thing that will make me have both? I said, yes, let's go on this journey together. And what he had to really understand and learn was all these problematic ideas of success and love and worth. And he got so far into the program where he, was getting really great external results. And then at some point realized, oh my goodness, I'm completely fused with this idea of if I do this thing, I will be successful. And that means that, wait, do I not feel I'm successful without it? And he completely collapsed and was just, this is what's going on here. I don't implicitly believe I'm a successful person. I believe I can be, but it's not who I am.
Hmm.
So he had to completely unravel all these metrics that he had made and find a way of tuning into sparks of signal and his own desire without judging them. So for example, he said, Anne-Marie, I took a bath in the middle of the day. I was like, took a bath, and it was the most magical thing. And the thing is, I didn't stop myself from there. I didn't just think, oh, here was a lovely bath, and then I stopped. I let my own signal continue after that. So I had the bath, and I didn't guilt myself for it. I continued. And so I gathered momentum in terms of my own alignment and my own desire, which brought me ideas with my career and my work and my impact. And he basically was able to keep that up over time. So a few weeks passed and he's created an incredible company that he is just in love with. And he understands how to stay in alignment with himself now, as opposed to these metrics of, oh, this means I've got it versus, no, this doesn't mean I've got it, especially not a bath at 12 p.m. on a Monday. So it really boils down to, what are your definitions of these things that we want, success and love and worth, etc. And how are they stopping us from actually being successful? Because if you actually followed your own alignment and your desires and you consistently stayed with that, it's inevitable that you will be successful by any metric, by a fulfillment metric, financial metric, etc. It's unresisted thought and unresisted desire that creates success.
There's two important questions that are coming to me that I think what our audience would care for. I mean, listen, I think they're big milestone in their journey of transition. First is, maybe it's our own, my Francis and I own belief, is that contribution has a role to play in finding a way to appeasement, or a different definition of driver, right? So being in service of something or feeling that you're contributing to something else. So does it have a role to play? Do you see that? Or is it not, maybe it's just for some people? I don't know, right? But how do you see that playing a role?
So you won't be fulfilled not being yourself. One of the biggest issues is our own self-definition of what we are, what consciousness is, what we're capable of, what our limitations are, what we lack, what's whole, blah, blah, blah. That is actually the thing that we're all most confused about. So when we take the idea of how we're defining ourselves and we put that with the idea of service or contribution or purpose or anything like that, that's the tension that can become problematic. And I'll show you why. If I say, to have any significance, I have to do something for somebody else, or I've got to contribute something to someone else, I'm already in a state of lack automatically, because until I contribute, I'm not fulfilled. Now, the way we've been created is we are creative beings. And so naturally, without you doing anything, we are all connected with each other. Now, it's really difficult to see that. It's easier actually now in the internet age, and you can see how social networks work. But when we're looking at each other as separate bodies, it's really hard to see how we overlap. When we get into the mental state, or we're talking about energy, etc., it's a little bit easier for people to feel out, yeah, the energy in the room is kind of a collective thing, etc., etc. But there is no point in time in which you are not contributing. It's just depending what state you're contributing from. So we're always contributing, which means that's just inherent in how we're all created and connected to each other. You can't not contribute. The question is, do you have fear as your main state, or do you have freedom, faith, love, enter word that feels good for you? And the distortion is that when we're in fear, i.e., we feel that there's something lacking or deprived within us or around us, you will automatically project that out into the world. So if I feel that there's something lacking in me, I will usually project that out to the world as there's something missing, or I'm not contributing, or I don't have purpose, or I don't have fulfillment, or I haven't got this achievement or this skill or whatever. But really, you're not going to contribute anything useful from that because you are communicating fear. Fear is something that stops communication rather than amplifies it. So it's not a question of, are we contributing or not? We're always contributing. And it's not a question of what the specific contribution is. It's a question of what's the state you're coming from while you're contributing. Yeah. So even if it's, I'm helping babies in Gaza, and everyone believes that is an amazing thing, you really are impacting the world. If you're in fear and you're really scared for those children, you're actually not helping. So it's, and that's a difficult one for people to, I know it's a controversial one, but my point is, the moment that you let the external thing be the thing that carries significance, you've lost the contribution already. It has to come from the value flowing through you. You know, that is what wealth is. That is what, we're doing here. So we have to try and think of it as, am I in freedom or am I in fear?
Yeah. But there's a shift in perspective too. It's like they're acknowledging that interconnectedness and the presence of contribution, right? Because it is freeing to see that, because I think because when you're a CEO, the identity and the definition of that is so individualistic, right? It's so heavy, and it's hard to know the contribution actually because it's so disconnected from you. It's actually normal. It's through people and the team and but anyway, and so you try to see what you control, right? So we're coming from a position of like, okay, controlling versus a position of like being in relationship with and acknowledging that and also just nurturing it, right? So there's a shift in I don't know, perspective and energy that I find interesting in how you describe it, which also comes from the sense of like I feel intuitively releases you from that fear because it puts less spotlight on your own
Yes.
head and self
Yeah.
versus the fact that you're part of a whole, right?
Exactly. I love the CEO one because that is the thing. It's that ultimate, it's using responsibility again in a dysfunctional way. You've got to let value flow through you. You don't control, you don't have to make value happen. Value happens. Money exists. So it's going to flow in the same way that your value exists and you just have to let it flow. And I think what we get stuck on is we think we always have to be creating our value, making it because we don't think it's there. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Wise words.
yes, you're dropping hits here.
Oh, I had one more. I have one
Yeah.
more that's important. Wait.
Yes, go.
I'm like a kid with candies. So I'm wondering, you spoke a lot of resistance. We spoke a lot of fears. That's great. I'm wondering, what do you see that grow into? What skills do they grow? So, okay. So just a little bit of context. So we've read a lot and there's a lot of studies on specificities of these high achievers, right? So their personalities, their ways, maybe their brain, you said it, they were too smart. Some also have, some kind of high potential or a different way to think. Their brains might work differently. They can endure pain like for so long, right? And so they arrive at this moment where they have to, I guess, approach things from a different angle. They have to approach pain, feel it, right? And so they have to use different skills. And I wonder, type of growth do you see through that? What type of skills or conditions they had that they let go of, and which new ones do they develop or build on for their next phase?
See it as plumbing. I know that's not really attractive. And you clear out the stuff, but you also widen the pipes. So it's not only that we have stuff in the way and, the value that we have is getting distorted through all this crappy stuff in the way. And therefore what people are receiving is tricky, whether that's in our relationships. You might be great in the company and you might be really bad at home or whatever it is. So, you clear out the mess, that's distorting all of that noise. But we also make those pipes wider. And that you can think of as capacity, whether that's capacity to feel. Or people don't want to hear that because they're like, do I want more capacity to feel? The thing about
Yes.
capacity to feel is, I'll tell you what the reward is. The capacity to feel is the same as saying the capacity to enjoy. It's the same as saying the capacity to feel alive. It's the same as saying the capacity for value to flow through you. It's the same as the capacity to connect more with people. So the most true essence of our soul isn't the words we use because they're abstractions of meaning and they can get disjointed. The truest thing you can find is your feeling, right? And because we're not very good at understanding our feelings and then using it productively, we don't use that intelligence very well. Once you start to look at yourself and you start to see, oh, what's my operating system that is creating the world around me and affecting the people in the way that I am, people are able to see, oh, A causes B. And there's a reward of understanding the causal element of how your psychology is affecting the world. So they clear out their mess and they're like, okay, now I'm less distorted. Now I'm having less problems, less looping in this way. But now I also realize there's probably more. There's probably more I can experience, more people I can help, more whatever. Essentially, what we all want to feel is more of ourselves. Even when we're experiencing other people or our mission or whatever, you are just having an experience of yourself. You're just having feeling. And so if our identity and our sense of self and our sense of experience is widening as well as being cleared out, you have a bigger, broader world, because we are just trying to evolve more into more of ourselves and to better versions of ourselves. And that's the game we're playing. We're going to continue to play. It's not about happiness. That's a fleeting weather-like state. Even the fulfillment only comes from when we are actively growing. And that doesn't mean skills in terms of the sense of like, now I'm better at math or I'm better at selling or whatever it is. It's really, can I be more of myself? And where can I expand my definition of myself? And that's the greatest experience in the world, turning your self-definition into the greatest experience you can have.
Well, we love going to these places. It's, I mean,
How inspiring.
we're
Yeah.
already sold. I think a lot of us feel like when you touch that space, even if it's a fleeting moment of this aliveness and this sense that we live in an abundant universe that's full of opportunity to experience yourself and have, joy and all of this. It's a beautiful place. And of course, we want to participate in creating that world. So it's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. We hope to get together more and speak more. Are there any parting words, or if someone's interested in your work or want to know more about you, where should they go?
So what I will do for you guys, if you can put a resource or a link, what I'll do is I'll put my kind of Align Next Chapter diagnostic for people who just want to kind of take the temperature and see where am I in relation to my own sense of fulfillment and direction, etc. That's a nice kind of way to kind of get into that little bit of work and reflection. So I'll send you guys that. I'm on LinkedIn at Dr. Anne-Marie King. And so that's the best place to find me. Otherwise, annemariekking.com. But the message I would like to send everyone away with is ultimately you are not deprived or limited in any way, whether that's results that you're having, experiences that you're having. What I want you to reframe it as is there are probably beliefs that are pretending that you're limited or deprived of something. And you have to be willing to look and sit and see where that might be true. And there might be some discomfort, but there will also be catharsis and opportunity and meeting yourself, which is really gratifying. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. It's been lovely. I
Thank
hope
you,
our
guys.
audience will enjoy it just as much. I'm sure they will. Yes.
Thank you to the both of you for putting those resources out, and you're both got wonderful energy. So thank you for inviting me here today.
Thank you.
Likewise.